Welcome back to Keeping It Real Estate. We're diving into part 2 of our Best of 2024 series, highlighting some of the most memorable moments and key takeaways from the 2024 year. This episode is packed with insights for everyone from seasoned investors to those just starting their real estate journey. So let's go ahead and kick it off with our Best of 2024 series with a conversation that really stood out this year. Eric Decker, a former NFL player turned real estate investor, joined us to talk about the mindset needed to build lasting wealth. In this clip, Eric shares his thoughts on the importance of smart spending and why financial education is critical, especially for athletes. It's a powerful discussion about making your money work for you. Let's dive in.
What was it about real estate investing that got you interested in the first place? You know, you do some investing overall, but what attracted you to real estate?
I've always loved real estate. I mean, I loved architecture, and I guess just the fact that it's an asset, you can own it, it's tangible, you know, and that idea. And so when I first started coming to Nashville in 2011, when I met Jess, it was just starting to kind of gain some attention, you know, and the growth was starting to come and like came at the right time, truthfully. But seeing the accelerated growth and want to be a part of it and really having friends in the industry of building, you know, single family homes, and then the success that we started having, it was like, this is fun, you know, because you're creating something. And really, I wasn't the creator, but like seeing someone's vision from paper come to life and a family move into it was amazing. And then just seeing kind of how it worked from a tax standpoint and just investment standpoint, starting to learn more about commercial and multifamily stuff was just, you know, again, an opportunity for me to like have a tangible investment, but also feel like a part of like something that's growing. You know, I know multifamily stuff, usually assets can be already built, or commercial for that matter can be built, but it's just the transaction of it that was exciting to me because I always loved finances. I loved, like I said, architecture and just real estate in general. So that kind of got me into this world of investing because I've tried and still do obviously like stock market stuff, do venture deals, you know, obviously different equity plays, but like real estate for me, I just know that it's a strong class. It's not going away. People need a place to live, and I'm here for the long haul.
Yeah. All that resonates with me as well. You know, the idea of something you can touch, you can see it's there. It's going to be there for the long haul. I'm right there with you. So a lot of these, you know, former athletes, they end up going broke after their career winds down. And it's obviously not always the case, but it happens a lot. What action or what did you take to help prevent that from happening? How did you know? What did you do differently than some of these other guys, do you think?
It's funny because I tell a story too, is when I first met Jess, I mean, she thought I was like completely broke because I was so frugal. I mean, my first 2 years I lived with Demaryius Thomas in Denver. I would drive from Denver to Minnesota when I go back home. I wouldn't fly a lot. Like I just wouldn't want to spend money. And it was because, you know, I think maybe more so, again, the fear of losing it, but also what do I need to buy that's going to like bring me happiness? Or what I always think, what's the ROI on buying this? That's kind of my thought process. I don't know where that comes from, to be honest with you. I haven't figured it out, but that's how I think. And so a lot of guys buy flashy things, whether it's cars or jewelry or, you know, and jewelry and some things may have like a value to it and hold value, but like so many, I call them liabilities that are being purchased and bought, and that's just like, it's gone. And like, I want to stick with like building my asset class and knowing that, you know, obviously it costs money. Yeah. But that money's put away and it's going to just slowly build into a better asset and a more, you know, flourishing asset. And that's really just been always a thought process for me. And I think just very, very frugal. I've always been very frugal. I think over time I loosened the straps and kind of enjoyed obviously the fruits of my labor. Not having kids, you're going to have to, but just that mindset of how you spend money and how you value it.
Yeah, man, I love that too. You know, I mean, what's the ROI on this purchase? I think about that a lot in my life of, do we need that car necessarily? I mean, do we really need that car? Or would it be better to have maybe an extra trip, or maybe you just stay home, like it doesn't need to even be money spent.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate that comment, and I can relate to being very frugal growing up in Minnesota. Maybe it was just kind of the way we were all, or at least this is the way I was brought up too, is keep what you can. If you don't need it, why give it away? Why go above and beyond? Just frugality was always huge in my life. So it says a lot. So when you're talking, let's say to a group of football players or athletes that just signed their first contract, or they're in their beginning stages of their career, what financial advice would you give them? I mean, it sounds like frugality and getting into investments is kind of the way you went right out of the gate.
Yeah. Well, I think understanding, if you can zoom out and look, that this is a very short window of time where you're going to be making the amount of money you'll be making. You won't ever probably make this money again in your career. At least 95% of the athletes will not be. And so how can I accumulate and hold on as much as possible? Because if you just look at like conservative investing and you get a 2, 3%, 4% return off that money, like possibly you could live off that money. That could be your annual expense or cover your expenses year to year. But I guess I look at, it's a better job of education, at least in the NFL, of a players association, trying to give them resources. All the financial advisors are vetted for the most part, but finding someone that has similar values and characteristics. And I think to that point, like being frugal, really thinking, okay, a dollar isn't really a dollar, it's 50 cents in our case, and knowing that something costs you $100,000 is really, you got to make $200,000 to pay for that thing. And so just the education of knowing what the value of a dollar looks like, especially in certain tax brackets, and what is needed, and I always think about this, and I'm almost embarrassed to never say it, but like I look at, buying a pair of pants, I'm like, okay, well, it's $50. Will I wear it 50 times and get, it's $1 a time I wear it, or, can I wear it 100 times? It's like, you got to have that idea of like, is this something that's going to bring value, and it's going to get my money's worth in a sense. I'm not just,
100%. I mean, and the idea of, you got the goose and the egg. If you're making your money, it's your seed money. It's just the beginning. Now can you take the money you've made and put it into something that produces the rest of your life?
Yep.
That one simple concept, is something that I didn't hear much growing up either, of you make the money and you go and spend it immediately. Well, now you're on that hamster wheel. You're just running. You're running, and you can spend it quickly, as everyone has seen with multiple big athletes. So getting that seed money invested into something where it takes care of the destruction of the value as they continue to print it, and to give you some cash flow to live off of. That's the best chance at freedom I've found so far. And the sooner athletes can get into that mentality, the better off they're going to be the rest of their lives.
Next, we're revisiting an eye-opening conversation from earlier this year with Steve Csobaji. Steve shared his expertise on self-directed IRAs and how they empower people to take control of their retirement accounts. Now, many investors stick to traditional mutual funds recommended by their financial advisors, and a lot of times they miss out on opportunities to diversify into asset classes like real estate. While investing in real estate through an IRA used to be complicated, innovative companies have made the process really seamless. Steve breaks this down on how self-directed IRAs can open the door to greater diversification and potentially stronger returns. Let's hear from Steve and learn how to take charge of our retirement investments.
Today we have a special guest with you, Steve Csobaji, on the show today. Steve has extensive experience in group medical and retirement planning, specializing in self-directed IRAs. So whether you're self-employed or a small business owner, understanding this process can significantly impact your retirement planning. We're going to explore the benefits, steps involved, and the key considerations to ensure a seamless transition, giving you the knowledge to take control of your retirement savings with confidence. With that said, Steve, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dan. Great to be here.
You bet. We're excited to have you. If you can introduce yourself a little bit, maybe share a little background in retirement planning and kind of how you got to where you are, that'd be great.
Yeah. I've got a very long background, longer than I care to admit, but I've really kind of done a lot in the way of financial services. I started way back at T. Rowe Price, answering phones and taking requests from retail clients, to going on to working with retirement plans and group benefits. Ultimately, all of that led me to work with Quest Trust Company, where it was a nice little pivot in my career. The bulk of my career, I dealt with what you would consider traditional assets, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement planning on that level. But when I got to work with Quest, I got into the area of alternative assets. And let me tell you, that's really a growing area. The pool of what people can use in that traditional space, believe it or not, is relatively small. So for them to really get proper diversification, these alternative assets are the place to be. These are the assets that you don't get through a Schwab or a Fidelity. So this is, I think, really where a lot of people are driving toward to improve upon their financial situation, especially in the last couple of years where we've seen the market so challenging in those traditional asset classes. This is where they're getting the diversification. This is where they're getting something that doesn't correlate to those traditional assets. And that's what's helping people really stay ahead of the game as they are planning for their retirement.
Got it. And what are some examples of some of those alternative assets? What are you referring to exactly?
Yeah, so mostly here at Quest, what we deal in is the realm of real estate as an alternative asset. So again, it's something that you can't go to Charles Schwab and say, I want to buy this house. And literally in your IRA, your self-directed IRA, you can buy a piece of property. I've seen people that are buying a house and using it as an Airbnb or a short-term or long-term rental, anything you can think of. But it also incorporates things like foreclosures, options, wholesaling. It's also in the multifamily space. That usually falls under what we call private entities. And this is a lot of what your clients do. So they're investing through an LLC or a JV or even a trust, and they're going into these alternative assets. And then a lot of what our clients do is also private lending. They act like a hard money lender. It can be secured, it can be unsecured, but it's usually real estate based. And, it then is, something where they can take a lien position to secure themselves on the property. And even some of the things that aren't real estate related would incorporate things like oil and gas, self-storage. I'm even seeing a lot in the way of private company stock. Companies where internally people are getting access to buying shares, but the companies aren't public yet. So they, again, can't do it through Schwab. They can't do it through Fidelity. They need a self-directed IRA.
Well, let's dive into some of the common situations for many people. Let's just say, we have folks that transfer jobs and they have to decide what to do with their 401k. What options do they have with that 401k?
Sure.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of a typical new client that we get. So their choices basically are that they, in many cases, can leave it in the 401k plan and don't necessarily have to do anything with it. The other choice is that a 401k plan, once you terminate your employment, is what's called a portable plan. So you have the ability to then roll that directly into an IRA. Now, by doing so, you avoid what otherwise would be a 20% mandatory withholding if you took the money personally, and you avoid any penalties and taxes that otherwise might apply. So by putting it straight into that IRA, you retain 100% of your money. Now, they can, again, go to a traditional provider, Schwab, Fidelity, Vanguard, and invest in any of the products that those companies sell. Now, the alternative is they can come to a company like Quest, where we set up the IRA, help them get it funded, and then the ball is in their court.
Yeah, so you were kind of explaining there. I just want to make sure I follow the difference between a self-directed IRA and a traditional IRA. Can you give it to us one more time? What are the differences, if any?
Sure. So I would argue that every IRA is self-directed in a manner of speaking. I decide what company to set it up with, and I decide, what I'm going to put my money in, or if I'm going to let somebody manage it for me. The distinction is that with a self-directed IRA, the individual really chooses the asset. So there are traditional IRAs, there are Roth IRAs, there are SEP IRAs. No matter where you go, you're going to have the same kind of IRA here. So that's really the bottom line, is that self-directed is just a marketing term, and the IRAs are going to be the same here, there, or anywhere else for that matter.
Okay, so really, at the end of the day, it's just a place for folks who want to be able to choose where to put the funds versus having somebody else put the funds.
Exactly. Or having your options limited by what that company sells.
Okay. Any sort of benefits of a self-directed IRA when you start to invest in real estate or precious metals or oil and gas, any private equity stuff like that? Are there any benefits that our listeners should be aware of?
Well, the one clear-cut benefit is that when you're in this alternative asset space, in many ways, you're dealing with a much more tangible asset. You could invest in the best company that's out there, and that company could still go bankrupt. And at the end of the day, you have nothing left to show for it. Your investment is completely at risk. But if you are using it for real estate, let's say that I am going to buy that house that I'm going to rent. And, what's a worst case scenario there? The house could burn down. However, through my IRA, I can insure that property. I have, at the end of the day, a tangible piece of real estate that if a worst case scenario happens, I still have that. There are those fallbacks in multifamily that properties are insured. And again, with private lending, I can take that lien position. If my borrower flakes out on me and doesn't repay the loan, I can collect that asset. So that is a big distinction when you're dealing in these alternative assets that you don't get through traditional investments.
Finally, we wrap up with Kyle Schlangen, a seasoned investor who's completed over 25 triple net lease deals. Kyle shares his journey from running an auto repair business to creating steady, hands-off income through triple net leases. His approach is all about maximizing returns with minimal management headaches. Let's listen to Kyle as he breaks down how to make triple net leases work for you.
Kyle, let's talk a little bit triple net. What was it or what is it about triple net that drew you into that asset class in the beginning?
As I mentioned in a previous podcast I was on with Mike Roeder, your partner, we delved into this a little bit, and it kind of started in about 2013, 2014. I owned an auto repair business, and I was really looking for something that wasn't so hands-on, something where I needed to get passive income. And I looked at some multifamily investing, but a lot of the properties I was looking at were far too large for me to handle personally. I wasn't very familiar with the syndication aspect, and I really found triple net leases to be something I could handle personally. It didn't take a ton of my time. And it was really just a great net worth builder as well as a great cash flow play. So I've been doing this now just about 10 years, and knock on wood, it's been a really solid business for us that I hope to do for the next 20 to 30.
Yeah, I love that. So how did you become educated enough to buy your first one or two deals? I mean, did you just start diving in and going for it, or how did you figure out what to do?
When I'd get home from work, it was really looking at get our kids to bed and then just start researching, how do I make passive income? What's the best area to look at? And again, I looked at multifamily, I looked at retail, looked at office space, and I found this triple net deal, and I really wasn't familiar with it at all. So I just became a maniac about diving in and learning and education and, listen to every podcast you could do, all the folks who have done it before me, and just kind of really took a lot of different pieces of some experts' models and really turned it into, a business that I could work around my schedule, and that could build kind of a life that my wife and I and our kids were really looking to have.
That's awesome. So what was the first deal you guys bought? Do you remember what it was called or what brand was?
So the first one was an Arby's, but I mean, it took about 2.5 years of me just educating myself, getting analysis paralysis, looking at everything before I finally pulled the trigger on something. And it was actually an Arby's here in Minnesota. And there was just a private gentleman selling it. There was no broker involved. So we actually worked directly through the process together. And he owns, I think, a dozen or more. So he actually really educated me on how to get through the process, how to get financing on it, how to close on it, how to really make that relationship with Arby's, a pretty large tenant, make that a good long-term success. So I owned that property actually for about 5 years before selling it. But during the ownership of that time, I also had built up some capital and really wanted to start investing. So I got into, a handful of other tenants, but Arby's was really the one that started us off.
Yeah. And so you have a kind of a unique perspective where you've got a lot of experience in triple net, and you had some serious experience in multifamily. And we owned a deal, the three of us, in Minnesota and another one, and you've invested passively in these deals. What's the main difference of being a general partner or an investor in a multifamily deal versus an investor in a triple net lease deal?
Honestly, the time and the management is the big thing that I appreciate it with multifamily. It's just far more time consuming. You've got, in our Minnesota property, we had 84 different tenants, and I was there probably 4 or 5 days a week cleaning up garbage and working with tenants, and it was hands-on. It was a lot of work, and it was fun work, but it's very hard to scale when you're spending that much time at one property. And the thing I like about triple nets is once you do your due diligence, once you close, you create this relationship with the tenant, you've just got a monthly check coming in, or wire now. But there's a ton of front end work, but once you own the property, the time, the management piece is very, very minimal.
Yeah. I mean, and you guys, I can attest to that. I mean, Kyle would be calling us and he would be there on site, cleaning up the parking lots, knocking on doors sometimes because this, resident profile wasn't the most efficient at paying rent. And, he got some firsthand on-site work done. So I can appreciate that. And so with your triple net deals, once you close on the deal, how much time and effort are you putting into the deal on a monthly basis about?
It really varies deal to deal, depending on if it's a double net, triple net. So what we're looking at is mostly triple net deals here. And, we should go back and what a triple net deal is. What it means, it's net, net, net. So we do this, 1, to minimize the time, and 2, to minimize the risk. So what it means is the tenant is on the hook for paying rent, for maintaining the property, for paying taxes on the property, for paying insurance on the property. So really, in a well-done triple net deal, I'm spending 2 to 5 hours a month probably on it, max. If there's ever questions that come in, regarding a maintenance issue, they need my permission. I'll still go there quarterly if it's close, or if it's local. I'll try to go once a week just to oversee the property, but they're really not anything I would have to do.
One thing we've talked about in the past, I think that stood out to me is we look at a lot of deals in multifamily, but you look at a ton of deals in the triple net lease space. I mean, remind me, how many deals are you looking at a month?
Well, keep in mind, triple net deals are so much easier to underwrite. I mean, when I've got a relationship, especially with a tenant, I keep going back, it's kind of a boring game because I try to work with the same tenant over and over and over. When you guys are going into a multifamily deal, you're having to do a ton of underwriting on each deal and on each market. Mine is partially market based, but a lot of it is tenant based. So, it varies during our busy season. I mean, when our kids are back in school, I'll look at significantly more, but I'll probably look at 50 to 100 a day, and I can underwrite, 10 to 15 of those. I mean, I've got a good enough eye by looking at them by now, saying what I don't want to waste our time on, but I'll probably underwrite 10 to 15 a day. And of that, I'll try to close on, one a month, one every 2 months, something like that. That's just a comfortable rate for me, I guess.
Oh, so you got 50 to 100 a day, and then 10 to 15 you'll underwrite. And again, I'm glad you emphasize the efficiency of underwriting the deals, because it's almost seems too good to be true. When he sends us a spreadsheet that he's underwritten the deals, I'm like, this is too easy. What are we missing here? And that's the beauty of triple net. So, one thing that I know a lot of investors have seen over the last, call it 5 years, or really the last 2.5 years, is that some of these multifamily deals with the bridge debts or with the challenged economy, the cash flow, is needing to be held in order to keep reserves up, to keep the asset in a stable place. Whereas with the triple net deals, I mean, have you ever had a deal that has not cash flowed or has not paid what you expected to pay throughout your 25 deals you've done?
Again, knock on wood, we've been very fortunate and underwritten these very hard and very conservatively. So, I mean, there are some that haven't performed to what I hoped, but knock on wood, I still have not lost any money on them. And again, that's just complete due diligence, knowing your tenant, knowing your market. All of them, we've been very fortunate. We've made money. We've outdone our projections, probably 60 to 70% of them. And probably 30% we've hit our projections. And then I can think of 2 in particular where I wasn't getting rich on. We made money, we got out, and that was right in that, early 2022 when interest rates really started increasing heavily, and I was still able to get out of them profitably. But again, it's just the amount of due diligence we do on it is knock on wood, proven to be pretty successful.
Yeah, that's huge. So a lot of the investors that are coming to us are looking for very consistent cash flow, and they're looking for larger depreciation write-offs. So some of the stuff we've been looking at recently are car washes, and a lot of folks know the car wash game, there can be some very large write-offs. So if you can mix a really nice depreciation loss with some cash flow that's very consistent, ideally in that 5 to 6% range, and it's not guaranteed, but it's as close, seems like, as you're going to get with real estate investment, to having cash on cash coming in the door. And then ideally, because of where we are in the market cycle, with rates rising so much and cap rates following, that over the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see some compression there and get a little bump on the end. That's kind of like the icing on the cake in our eyes. Did I describe that right? Is that how you see these deals and the value in what you're looking to create?
I think you're absolutely right, Dan. But I think we should just take a quick step back. And so, as you guys know better than I do in multifamily, with the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, we saw some major depreciation advantages we've been able to take advantage of, and that is starting to sunset. I think it sunsets in 2026. But there's still some really good bonus depreciation you can take out there, especially on a certain asset class. And that asset class right now is anything oil related, fuel related. So you've got convenience stores, quick lube, and car washes are also in the same category as those, if you will. So we're still able to take some pretty significant bonus depreciation that you can't find in multifamily. So if we can find cash flow as well as take advantage of that bonus depreciation, it's really a great time. And you hit the nail on the head when you said we're buying at cap rates that we haven't seen for the last 5 years on this. And as these interest rates sneak down, as we all expect that they will, I think we'll see some cap rate compression. We'll see some people obviously be able to buy better with better interest rates. So that really is the icing on the cake.